Welcome to Tesla Facts and Myths, where we're going to tie together vertical integration theory with business strategy. So first, we're going to look at two possible myths about Tesla. Number one, Tesla is now 80% vertically integrated, says Goldman Sachs after a Tesla factory visit. We'll examine this when we see how Tesla vertically integrates. Second, Elon Musk may single-handedly revive a business practice that's gone out of style. We'll examine this when we see how other major companies have implemented, effectively or not, vertical integration strategies. So first, what is vertical integration? Vertical integration is when a company is present throughout multiple steps in the value chain. The value chain represents the theoretical links between the raw material, the companies that turn that raw material into a finished product, and the final consumer. So here you can see the auto industry, or a simplified version of the auto industry value chain. It starts at the bottom with raw commodity producers. That's rubber for tires, steel for the frames, silicon for the computers. Auto part suppliers that manufacture the shocks and struts and all the little components that go into a car. The auto manufacturers, of course, like Toyota, that we all think about. Auto dealers that sell the cars, auto mechanics that service the cars, and the car buyer who ultimately ends up buying the car. Now, if we're looking at integration, that's a word that you often hear in context, vertical integration, then we need to know two vocabulary words. The first is forward integration. So if, say, Toyota were to buy an auto dealership, ignore whether or not that's possible right now, but if Toyota were to buy an auto dealership, it's going forward to the consumer, so we call that forward integration. If Toyota were to buy its own auto part supplier, it would go backward toward the raw resource, in which case that would be called a backward integration. So the easy way to think about this is that forward goes to the consumer and backward goes back to the raw material. So forward to the consumer, back to the raw material. You can also find horizontal integration. That would be, say, when Fiat and Toyota decided to merge. An odd decision, but if two companies within the same strategic space or industry decided to merge, that would be an example of horizontal integration. So is Tesla vertically integrated? Let's see. First, commodity producer. So does Tesla produce its own commodities? By and large here, the answer is no. You don't see Tesla owning rubber plantations. You don't see Tesla owning steel or iron ore mines and steel mills and all the things that are used to produce finished or processed raw materials. So Tesla is not really in the commodity production space, but check it out. We hear a lot about Tesla in terms of auto parts. Tesla, more than any other major car company, manufactures a lot of its own auto parts. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Tesla needs to, because they have a unique system for how they power their cars. So Tesla makes batteries. They make their own software. They make their own computers that power the software, and they write their own code for how to manage their car for some of its, say, autonomous driving capabilities. Of course, Tesla does their own car manufacturing in California and in China now. Tesla owns their own dealerships in states where this is legal, and otherwise essentially does mail order Teslas in states where this is not legal. Tesla owns their own charging stations, so this would be the equivalent of a Toyota owning their own gas stations. So Tesla owns their own charging stations, and of course at the end you've got the consumer who is benefiting at the end of the chain from all of these Tesla vertical integration decisions. So is Tesla vertically integrated? Yes. Now I have no way to validate whether or not it's 80% vertically integrated or what that might even mean. However, for our purposes, learning strategy at the MBA level or undergraduate level, Tesla is quite vertically integrated compared to other major companies. Okay, so fact. All right, second headline. Elon Musk may single-handedly revive a business practice that's gone out of style. This one, without a doubt, is a myth. Because think back to this company, Apple. Apple began to vertically integrate early in the process under Steve Jobs' second tenure as CEO, and one of the most famous examples of Apple vertical integration are Apple stores. Apple does their own servicing. Think Genius Bar. They do their own sales. They build their own stores. Apple doesn't manufacture their own products. They work with Foxconn. We'll talk about this in a second. But Apple has been quite vertically integrated for such a large company for a number of years now. So it is absolutely not true that Elon Musk single-handedly revived a business practice that was going out of style. If you're going to give credit to anybody, go back to Steve Jobs. But if you look back to Steve Jobs, you would find people in the 90s and the 80s and the 70s. Vertical integration was extremely popular, say 100 years ago. Henry Ford was running essentially a bit like Tesla now, an entirely vertically integrated company. That fell out of fashion for about 40 or 50 years. And you can watch my second video to see if it's coming back in fashion or not. Disney has examples of vertical integration going back 30 to 40 years. This is well before Tesla was a glimmer in Elon Musk's eye. The example from Disney is Disney owned the Disney Channel, which broadcast Disney content, and Disney was also the studio that produced the content. So studio is like the raw material. Content streaming, or the TV, gets you closer to the customers. Those are two steps in the vertical integration process. And finally, Google. Google just honestly, I think somewhat unwittingly, started in search, kept developing software, ended up developing Chrome and Android, their two operating systems, ended up building computers, and all of this was by about the time Tesla was even founded. So many large companies have had elements of vertical integration in their strategies before Tesla even got off the ground. So Apple. All right, so I said Apple was vertically integrated, and what do we mean by that? Let's take a look. Number one, product design. So before the product even gets conceived, you have a team of engineers and designers getting together to create the product in concept. Then you manufacture. So Apple doesn't do this component. They work with Foxconn in China, and Foxconn manufactures most of Apple's products. Then you do the marketing and advertising. Does Apple do that? Absolutely. So think back to any of the iconic Apple advertisements that you've seen recently. Yeah, that's pretty easy to think of. They do their own service. So Genius Bar service, they sell their own insurance. And finally, they own their own retail stores. So the retail store is the tricky one. Should most companies own their own retail store? Absolutely not. Right? If it makes no sense for Procter & Gamble to own the Procter & Gamble retail store, Procter & Gamble needs to be sold at Safeways and Targets and Walmarts, your deodorants, etc. So the fact that Apple was able to successfully, and a lot of this has to do with the fact that Apple is a luxury product and needs to be presented as such, but able to successfully build their own retail store did surprise a lot of people. So in this case, it can make sense for Apple to control almost the entire value chain for its luxury or certainly necessity plus type products. So what's the opposite of vertical integration? I think the previous slides make vertical integration sound pretty good, but there is another perspective here, and it's outsourcing. So outsourcing was the name of the game throughout the 80s and 90s because companies were big and they were bloated and they were doing all kinds of activities in-house that they had no business doing. So you may have heard of lean manufacturing, and essentially lean manufacturing is the best possible way to envision an outsource-based business model. So let's talk about that here with Toyota. So what does Toyota do? Toyota's activity is car manufacturing. Toyota is the most profitable car company in the world, measured by net income, and it is the largest market cap of any car company, at least as of July 1st, 2020, when I'm recording this. So how does Toyota work its magic? Does Toyota do any raw commodity production? Did they grow their own rubber? No. Did they make their own steel? No. Okay, smart move, Toyota. Leave that to the experts in rubber and steel. Do they make their own parts? All right, so we found out that Tesla makes their own parts, and that's probably a good thing for Tesla. So why is it not a good thing for Toyota? Toyota makes so many cars that they have many car part companies competing to produce the car parts in the most efficient and cost-effective manner possible. So it's much cheaper for Toyota to outsource effectively the part building process than to keep it in-house. So we know Toyota is great at manufacturing. They have their just-in-time manufacturing process, so they're bringing those parts in just in time to turn them into the finished automobiles. Does Toyota own dealerships, right? You think, oh yeah, sure, I'm going to the Toyota dealership. Well, actually, Toyota doesn't actually own the Toyota dealership. Long story, I don't want to get into all the silly laws here in the United States. But because Toyota is a mass company, they need to be present in all 50 states. They can't do what Tesla does and rely on the fact that people, say, in South Dakota are just going to mail order a Tesla. No one's going to mail order a Toyota. You have to go to a lot and actually buy the Toyota. So Toyota needs dealerships in all 50 states. And so effectively, that's a way of outsourcing the sales process of their own cars. And finally, you get to the consumer. So is Toyota vertically integrated? Absolutely not. Toyota is an example of a very lean, outsourced production model. So no vertical integration. And oh my God, no vertical integration. You know, does Toyota know what's going on? They don't do vertical integration, but everybody should be doing vertical integration. They're going to go bankrupt because of this. And of course, only Elon Musk understands business. That's your Tesla fanboy comments board. You can find that anywhere on the internet. But newsflash, Tesla fanboy comments board, people, all car executives understand vertical integration. It has its place. For Tesla, it means manufacturing the right parts, the parts that are strategic to a Tesla, the batteries, computer software, the seats, perhaps other fun things that I don't know. But it does not mean that vertical integration is smart across the board. But in most cases, especially when the products are for a broad consumer base, like with Toyota, the vertical integration would be strategically suboptimal. They would be giving up money by spending more to produce their own parts. This is all to say that vertical integration is not a one-size-fits-all strategy. So we take the example of Boeing. Boeing uses a lot of aluminum manufacturing the frames of their aircraft, but that doesn't mean that they should go out and purchase Alcoa, an aluminum production company. Right? They can let Alcoa, which is a much bigger company with respect to how much aluminum it produces, produce the aluminum and then buy it at the best possible prices to do what they do best. I've heard of that as core competencies. So there you have it. All right, well, thank you so much. Thanks for watching, and check out my other videos here on YouTube.